Hey now, Adam.
Hey, what's up, Sitch?
So the other day we watched a congressional hearing. If you haven't seen it, check it out, where the presidents of Harvard, Penn, and MIT were called to testify before Congress because it seemed like they were allowing anti-Semitic protests to take place on campus. And when they were asked directly whether advocating for the genocide of the Jews violated the student code of conduct, they couldn't give a clear, definitive answer to that very straightforward question.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it if the
yes
speech
or no?
If the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment. Yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide?
Pretty bizarre.
Yeah, not great. And so those clips blew up, and that created a firestorm of controversy. And now lots and lots and lots of people and big donors are calling for the presidents of these schools to be fired. So the president of Harvard is a woman named Claudine Gay. We saw her in, testifying, and she was very smug and horrible during the entire hearing. And she could not give a clear, definitive answer on whether it was a violation of Harvard's student policy to advocate for the genocide of Jews or not.
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
And we saw Ibram X. Kendi defending her, calling people racist for attacking her and saying that she should resign. Because for the last 8 years, they've all been very restrictive, very woke on speech, and been very censorious. And now they're hiding behind free speech. At the hearing we watched, they just kept saying, free speech, free speech. We care so much about free speech. And yet, one massive example of hypocrisy that I kind of re-found out because we talked about it when it happened was that Claudine Gay here was directly involved with canceling a black professor at Harvard named Roland Fryer, all because he dared to actually look at the data and found that the police were not actually some super racist organization that was disproportionately shooting and killing black men.
The world is awake to inequality and systemic racism, and anti-black racism in particular, really like never before.
Right. We talked about it when it happened, but we didn't know that this person was going to be the president of Harvard one day.
Yeah. Right. She wasn't at the time. She was promoted after that incident.
Right.
Okay. She failed upward. So all these people are, as you see, these headlines, all these people are calling for these presidents to resign. Major donors. There's one major donor at Pennsylvania who had given $100 million or had promised to give $100 million to the university. And they said that they're going to pull back that gift unless they fire the president of UPenn, who The Economist caught a very good picture of her right there, looking especially derpy. Now, this is all fantastic. This is all wonderful because it's really showing to a lot of people something that we've been talking about for years, which is how dangerous the far left is, the woke left is, and how it's sunk its claws into these colleges. And a lot of people who are like the moderate or mainstream left were not taking this seriously because they couldn't see it, because all the ire was, directed at Donald Trump or Republicans. But now that it's directed at Jews, and now that you have very openly the presidents of these universities who will literally not just say that, advocating for genocide is wrong, finally people, like, the light bulb has gone off in their head. And this comes, and I wanted to bring up the poll because this is like pretty shocking and terrifying. There's this new poll that came out, and it shows that 20% of 18 to 29-year-olds that responded to this poll think the Holocaust was a myth.
That's insane. That's crazy. So it's 1 in 5.
Yeah.
1 in 5 people 18 to 29
Right.
don't think the Holocaust was real.
And the thing that's crazy, that's especially crazy, is that if you look at the next age nomination, 30 to 44, that number drops to 8%.
Right. So it's
8%.
more than double.
Right. That means that number went up more than double.
2.5 times.
And the thing's crazy. It's not like if they had said, like, do you know about the Holocaust? I wouldn't be surprised if like 20% of people didn't know about it, right? No, they think it's a myth. Okay. So they have to have some knowledge about it to think it's a myth. So it's totally crazy. Now to be fair with the polling, obviously there's been this resurgence of anti-Semitism on the far right. And now it seems like there's this big resurgence of anti-Semitism and, obviously getting conflated into the Israel-Palestine situation that is, creeping up on the far and the woke left. So Jeffrey Miller, who's this really awesome evolutionary psychologist, he tweeted out something very interesting about Claudine Gay, who's the president of the University of Pennsylvania. The president of Harvard. And he said, "Today I learned that Harvard President Claudine Gay seems to have published only 11 peer-reviewed journal papers in her entire academic career." So what, you might ask? Well, that's about the number you normally need to get hired as a first-year tenure-track assistant professor at a decent state university. Wow. It's the number I published in the 12 months before I got tenure. Okay.
Wow.
So her entire career, she's only published 11 peer-reviewed papers. And I think actually later in the day, that got revised down to 10.
Okay. So she lost a paper in 24 hours.
Right. And so though Jeffrey does continue to go on, and he says it's very interesting, saying it's not actually that unusual for these Ivy Leagues to have people that move up in the ranks, not based on the merit of how good of an academic they are, how much papers they're publishing, but on politics, on how well they're able to wheel and deal, and what kind of favors they're willing to trade out to people, what kind of behind the scenes things they're supposed to do.
Right.
And
so Claudia Gay is handing out permission slips to say genocide the Jews in the Quad, and that's how she's able to become president of Harvard. Is that what's going on here, Sitch?
Well, so a little bit later, we're going to watch a clip that talks about her, and I'm going to bring up a paper that kind of talks about the super woke DEI initiatives that she was famous for trying to implement in Harvard.
Okay.
Yeah. So she, like, when they promoted her, they definitely knew what she was all about.
Right. Yes.
And she actually got her position as president of Harvard 2 days after the Supreme Court struck down the affirmative action decision. So, of course, Ibram X. Kendi, for some reason, decided to enter into this conversation.
What do you mean for some reason? Obviously, Ibram X. Kendi has to weigh in on this controversy.
Well, you think he'd be too embarrassed when it turned out that, he was working at a college that was producing absolutely nothing but wasting everyone's money, right?
Hold on. Where do you think those 11 papers were published? Come on. What are you talking about here?
You know what? That's a great point. That's a great point. So he said, to be racist and sexist is to assume superior white and male leaders earn their positions through merit and inferior black and woman leaders receive their positions due to identity. These ideas show up in times of crisis. The black and woman leader is assumed to be the problem.
I mean, I think the problem can be independent of one another.
Right. So I'm going to bring up this video. Now, this is a fantastic video, and we talked about this, I believe, last year when it came out. This is a video, we'll put a link in the description, by Good Kids Production. And they talk, it's called Harvard Canceled Its Best Black Professor, Why? And this is about the story of a professor named Roland Fryer, who's a good friend, supposedly, of Glenn Loury, who worked at Harvard, and he was looking into the question of police shootings, because obviously this was very on top of everyone's mind a few years ago. And he came to a conclusion that the woke people at Harvard didn't like. And let's see where that got him.
His research came to a conclusion that the administration wasn't happy with.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're gonna watch a couple clips of this, and we'll see how Claudine Gay is involved in this. Okay. So this is just what Roland was looking into.
We couldn't find bias in lethal use of force. In fact, he found that it was less likely that force would be used against a suspect when the suspect was black.
The resulting media firestorm prompts credible death threats, and Roland is temporarily assigned around-the-clock police protection.
Okay, so he publishes this big study that's about actually the whole narrative, the BLM narrative about police officers shooting black people is BS. That gets him into trouble. So let's see how Claudine Gay figures into this whole situation.
People at Harvard consider Claudine Gay, the daughter of an engineer who went from Exeter directly to Stanford, then to Harvard. She's a silky smooth corporate operator. Her signature accomplishment is a Harvard-wide inequality initiative.
The world is awake to inequality and systemic racism, and anti-Black racism in particular, really like never before.
It's a standard array of task forces, symposiums, buzzwords promising equity and inclusion.
Okay, so as we know, obviously she didn't move up in the ranks because of her own academic achievement, because she has very little, if any. But she did have a lot of these, equity programs that she was pushing at Harvard.
Right.
That's what got people interested in her. Okay.
Right. I've heard this line before. Sitch.
Yes. So essentially, Roland Fryer, after all this stuff with this reporting on the police shooting came out, he had an assistant who worked for him come out, and she accused him of sexual impropriety. Though when they looked into this, these claims seemed really ridiculous. It'd be something like he made a joke about how he learned to be a good negotiator when he was in high school, trying to pick up chicks or something. And apparently these claims were so poor against him that when Harvard investigated him, they came to the conclusion that what was merited for it, the people who investigated him, they said, well, based on what the claims against him are, we think that he should get, he should just have to do some hour-long, one of those training things where they tell you
community service.
Not even community service, one of those you need to go to listen to someone tell you how to talk to the your employees and work people without offending them.
Slap on the wrist. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they suggested. Instead, what happened was that the board that had the ability to make the decision decided to close down all of his research, close down the lab that he was working, so all the people and people working there would not be able to continue the research, and to suspend him for 2 years from Harvard.
And Claudine Gay was involved in this?
Claudine Gay was involved with this. She was on the board that made this decision, and she took it even a step further.
Wow.
Or she attempted to take it a step further, okay?
I was only able to figure out the identity of 2 members of that committee, okay? One of them is Claudine Gay. The other one is Larry Bobo.
Yeah. Champagne, silver spoon, liberals.
Right. People whose careers and reputations were directly threatened by Roland's work. Those are the people that get to determine Roland's punishment.
And she advocated for...
Claudine Gay asked the president of the school to revoke Roland's tenure. President declines because that's not happened even once in the last 100 years. But this punishment is career death.
So Claudine Gay literally wanted this guy's tenure revoked.
Wow. All because his research interfered with her woke narrative.
Yeah. There's an article that's about her woke initiatives. This is from 2020. So this is before she was the president of Harvard, but she was dean of faculty in arts and sciences. Okay. What she wanted to do was that she wanted to hire a cluster of new employees and new teachers that would all teach in the ethnic studies departments. Okay. She wanted a whole bunch of new ethnic studies teachers. That was the first thing she wanted to do.
Shoring up her power base.
Right. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Of course.
She also wanted to establish at Harvard College visiting professorship in ethnicity and migration, a new program meant to recruit leading scholars of race and ethnicity to spend a year at Harvard engaging and teaching undergraduates.
Okay.
She also wanted to expand the Inequality in America postdoctoral fellowship program. She also wanted to work very closely to develop concrete goals and identify personal and departmental division and school-level actions for building an effective and active culture of anti-racism at Harvard.
Sounds like cancer.
Yes.
So she wants to develop a bunch of racist programs.
Yeah. So that's Claudine Gay, president of Harvard. People are calling for her to be fired. I hope she is. This is a huge wake-up call, I think, to people on the left. And actually, I don't know if you saw this, Adam. Sam Altman even tweeted about this.
Oh, Sam Altman from OpenAI.
Yes. He tweeted out yesterday. He said, for a long time, I said that anti-Semitism, particularly on the American left, was not as bad as people claimed. I like to just state that I was totally wrong.
Wow.
I still don't understand it really or know what to do about it, but it is so effed.
Well, the interesting thing for me about this story is when we were watching those clips of President Gay in front of Congress, I do think that there was a hint of duping delight on her face.
Yes.
I felt as though she really enjoyed telling these people that she wasn't going to tell her kids that they weren't allowed to call for genocide of people that she believed were privileged oppressors. From a place she sees herself and these kids as coming from a place of marginalization where they are lashing out at the people who are oppressing them. It did seem as though she very much enjoyed being in the position that she was in. I think all that is probably changing relatively quickly, and I think it should change very quickly because we can't have this two-tiered system where anyone who is perceived as a marginalized person is above reproach, beyond criticism. You can't say anything bad or negative about them. And anyone who is perceived as an oppressor or privileged, you can literally march around a Ivy League campus and call for their genocide. And supposedly that's free speech and just fine.
True. Well said. Well said.
So anything else? Any final thoughts?
That's it.
Hi, you just listened to a Sitch and Adam recorded video. That's right, we're doing Monday through Friday deep dive recorded videos now. And of course, we're still doing our live streams. Our live streams are on Sunday and Tuesday starting at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. And you can super chat us, or you can join the channel. Subscribe to this channel right here to watch the live show or watch more of our awesome deep dive videos.